Senua finds a unique courage to keep pushing forwards on her quest, no matter what. She sees the world differently to those around her and faces challenges. Senua finds a unique courage to keep pushing forwards on her quest, no matter what. She sees the world differently to those around her and faces challenges others would avoid. When driven so strongly by one powerful purpose, she will do anything to rid the world of the darkness. This is her life's mission, and she will not stop until she fulfills her quest.
My name is Eddie, and I have lived with psychosis for most of my life. To me, psychosis means living in a different reality, a reality that isn't shared with other people. Often living with psychosis is dark and miserable. While experiencing psychosis, I've got to hear the voice of God, the opposite, seen and spoken with angels, and been to hell itself. Recovery college and peer support really did turn my life around. I thought I would never get better, and yet here I am. The things that Senua experiences in Hellblade are very similar to some of my own experiences. She lives in a reality that other people might find hard to understand. She sees significance in symbols, in meeting people, in all sorts of things that are going on around her. Senua is experiencing an altered state of reality which would be very hard to understand without having experienced it yourself or playing Hellblade.
Lost soul who fought through hell to find us.
You were lost. Not anymore. Paul.
Are you ready for what you will find here?
It's difficult saying that it's an illness, that it's not real. Of course, to me, it is. And of course, to Senua, it is. And that's what's driving her to do these amazing feats of courage, to overcome pain and exhaustion, to do what she knows she must.
All the fear, everything I've seen, everything I've done has led me to this place.
We've come so far, not far enough. Say it.
You are ready. Tell them.
In Senua's Saga Hellblade 2, we tell the second part of the story of Senua, a Celtic warrior who, like Eddie, has experiences of psychosis, seeing the world in a unique way and existing in a reality unshared by others. At a surface level, this manifests for Senua in seeing things that others don't, hearing things that others don't, and having unique beliefs about the world.
My name's Paul Fletcher. I'm a psychiatrist and a professor of neuroscience at the University of Cambridge, and I've been working with the Ninja Theory team on Hellblade and other projects for several years now. I am a clinical doctor, but have also added research and teaching to my role. And in all three areas, I'm especially interested in the human brain and how it strives to make sense of the world, which is complex and changing all the time.
The lake, like a mirror. You can see the reflection.
Senua, like many people, experiences psychosis. Now, psychosis is not a diagnosis, although it is associated with a number of medical and psychiatric conditions. But ultimately, it's a loose description of a shift in one's experience of reality.
What are you doing?
Screams of the dead.
There's something here.
They are not.
I need to find out what it is.
They are.
A person with psychosis might experience changes in their perceptions and their beliefs. For example, they might see or hear things that other people can't. And they might come to believe things that are quite uncharacteristic for them. For example, they might feel that somebody, perhaps somebody even very close to them, is intent on trying to harm them. Now, it's very important to remember that this is not just a vague feeling or an imagination. To the person, it feels like their reality, just as everything around me feels like my reality to me. I, like many people, feel that in order to even begin to understand psychosis, we have to start with thinking about how the brain works in general, how it makes sense of the world around it. And when we do that, we're repeatedly confronted with evidence that actually it doesn't just rely on the evidence of our senses, but it actually relies on what it already knows, on its predictions, its anticipations, and its expectations.
Your voices.
Now that might seem like a defect. After all, why would we want to rely on what we already know rather than what the world is telling us? But if we did act simply as passive receivers, we would be completely swamped. We'd be like a newborn infant trying to make sense of the colours and shapes without any way of having a framework to try and understand those colours and shapes. Our senses are bombarded with information from the world that's rapid, it's intensive, it is noisy, ambiguous, unreliable. And if we were to try and make sense of that without imposing patterns and expectations, then it would be like trying to assemble a multi-dimensional jigsaw without knowing what the picture was on the box. Many of us think that the brain ultimately is an organ that makes predictions. It craves patterns and associations in order to make sense of the world. And without that, we are confronted with a feeling of uncertainty, of anxiety, of distress, even of fear.
They're calling. Something is drawing near.
Where do these predictions come from? Many of them are actually embedded in the structure of our brain, probably wired there by evolution. Many of them come from our earliest experiences as babies, trying to make sense of this new world that we're born into. Many come from our early childhood experiences, from what we learn from others and how we interact with others, from our parents, our teachers, our friends. We all have a feeling that we're directly in contact with an objective reality, but it's probably the case that what we experience as our constructed model of the world is a blend of the evidence of our senses, but also what we are predicting or expecting from the world. So this blend exists in a very fine and delicate balance, and the weighting of that balance probably varies a great deal across different individuals. But crucially, this balance is what determines how we experience and interpret and act upon the world. And some of them are embedded in shared experiences with others, our society, our culture, our arts, even our religions and our mythologies. So for the most part, this works very well for us and enables us to make sense of the world, but it's also, being a delicate balance, it can be shifted, and it's very easy, even under the most normal day-to-day circumstances, to deviate from objective reality. A good example of this is the hollow mask illusion. All of us are familiar with a mask. We know that it depicts a face and that the inside is hollow. But when we see the mask rotating round and we see the hollow side, there is a deeper prediction, probably embedded in our brain, that facial features tend not to be hollow, that they stick out. And this deeper prediction can override our knowledge that the mask is hollow and make us actually perceive the face as sticking out at us. Despite what we know, the deeper predictions will override this. So for me and many in my field, perceptual illusions like this, which are very common, are really interesting because they tell us something fundamentally about how the brain is making sense of reality using its predictions. But more than that, for me, it's very interesting because it begins to give us a sense of how psychosis might begin to emerge. Psychosis is this experience of an altered internal construction of one's reality. And it seems feasible that this is dependent upon this balance I've talked about between predictions and evidence. And it is probably the case that some people tend to weight their predictions more heavily. This, in many circumstances, is advantageous because it means that they can discern patterns and associations that perhaps other people can't. But if that balance was shifted further by different circumstances, then it may well be that they begin to construct a reality that doesn't accord with the world around them. What might cause that shift? Well, a number of things. It could be caused by stress, sleep deprivation. It could be caused by illness, neurochemical disturbances. It's also the case that our experience will change how we predict things. So a very profound experience, for example, of trauma, could powerfully change the way in which we make predictions about the world and shift us from this delicate balance into a state of psychosis. In the case of Senua, we know that from an early age she was able to discern patterns and associations that perhaps other people couldn't. And on top of that, her childhood and adolescence had a number of traumas in it. Her father was abusive and he accused her of being the cause of evil and darkness. Her mother, who had the same capabilities as she did, was actually sacrificed for the same reason. And in addition, her village was attacked by Vikings and her lover was brutally killed. And it's possible that all of these traumas would act